Hello, I'm NBG, and welcome to the channel. Today's video, I kind of just want to get straight to the point. Today, I would like to discuss the hidden skill method of crafting, potentially show you, but more than likely at least talk about it, what it is, how do you do it, why you could or should do it, and then also just talk about like the pros and cons and just my general thoughts on it as a whole, because it's potentially a good thing, but also mostly kind of a bad thing for the general WoW economy. And I mean that in the sense of how it affects most players. So, you know what? Without further ado, let's just get right after it. So I'm on my leatherworker, and I just want to briefly discuss what crafting with hidden skill is. So if I go into leatherworking, and if you can see on, like, let's take I don't know, let's take Earthshine for example. On Earthshine, for example, what hidden skill is when you're able to craft something and you're able to craft it as close to max as possible without physically any way whatsoever being able to go over, right? You do not, in order to do this method, you cannot be able to any way whatsoever be able to actually hit. There is no possible way in the game to hit 375 skill for Earthshine scales in particular. That actually goes for all the scales, by the way. However, you can get really, really close, and that's the idea, is you want to get as close as possible without hitting it or going over. The closer you get, the game seems to have almost what I would consider an additional dice roll that gives you a small amount of skill that's hidden, that doesn't show up. There's no way to see it. There's nothing there that shows it to you. But the closer you get to 375 without going over, the higher your percent chance is of getting enough hidden skill to be able to proc. That's what would allow you to essentially proc tier 3s without actually even getting an inspiration proc. So with this method, what you're able to do is it's almost like doubling your inspiration in a way, because not just you have like a dice roll for inspiration essentially, but you also kind of have a dice roll as well for this hidden skill, or the combination of the two, which really in this case it's just going to be basically inspire or hidden skill. Technically I think you can get both, but it doesn't matter, because most cases if you're going to inspire, you're going to make it tier 3 anyway. Okay, so that's essentially what it is. Let's go ahead and go into it a little bit more and maybe do a demonstration. So in order to do this crafting method, what you're doing is you're basically crafting with tier 3 materials, because you're slamming as much skill as possible. You don't see the example here because I only have 274 skill. However, if I go into simulation mode and let's say I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to use tier 3 materials, it'll tell you right here that I only have 7 missing skill. So I can make these at what, 268? I would be 268 out of 375 in order to make the Earthshine, so I can get really close, but I cannot go over. And I actually cannot get like any more skill any which way. I have all 3, as you can see. I have all 3 blue tools. I am 100 in skill, actual base skill. I also am spec'd in a way that for any of the scales, I cannot get any more skill or inspiration for that matter on my tree whatsoever. I cannot gain more, no physical way. This is cap, right? So because of that, as you've noticed, and we'll talk about this later because this is a separate issue, I actually have 102 skill plus the 22. Now the reason I have 122, because if you've noticed, I race changed. I race changed to Calterian specifically to mess with it, undo some of my own math, and the 2 skill that you get from their racial, which is what is it, Jack of all trades? Yeah. From Jack of all trades, skill in all professions increased by 2. In this particular example, what I was able to do with it, it is actually insane. I would argue that that 2 skill nets probably somewhere between 8 and 12% additional tier 3 procs. It is absolutely nutty how strong just 2 skill is, and this is something I'll talk about in the end, but this is why stuff like this might need to change. I know this stuff was nerfed prior. It was nerfed prior to the expansion, where they were basically halved. I think it went from 5 to 2, and then other classes, like let's say Draenei, I think it was 10 and went down to 5. It's still unbelievably busted, but I don't want to get too far into that yet. However, let's go ahead and take a look at maybe a potential example. So I think I found the example I wanted to use. So the way that I typically do this is I will take a look at the item and I will search it up, and I want to consider what's the difference between the crafting cost as well as like what you can get back. So an easy way to do this, I can just go in here and say, hey, I'm going to use tier 3 Dinside. It'll give, let's cross this out, it'll tell me my current crafting cost of a little over 1400. A little over 1400. And then what are we getting back? We would get back, if we procced 2 tier 2s, which is what, about 900 a piece, 9 and 9, 900 and 900, that's about 1800. So it's about 14, what is it? About 1436 for a little bit under 800. So there's only like a 300 or so gold difference between like the best case scenario, which is how much it costs, plus like getting back tier 3. You got to know that you're going to get tier 3 about 75% of the time, at least if I run with my inspiration tool. But the problem is when I hit tier 2s, I'm essentially losing a good amount. So usually you don't want the gap between like the tier 2 and the tier 3 of what you're going to get to be too large, and you want to make sure that the gap between what you're selling as well as the crafting costs is big enough to leave some room for error. I don't know 100% when I look at this if this is actually going to be worthwhile. It's close. Craft Sim shows that you're going to make a very small amount of profit if you do a lot of them, just the general crafting. And that is like using, the cheapest mats and doing it that way and just purely relying on inspiration rather than this method. Now, I think I'm going to go ahead and test this just to see if we can make more gold doing this method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get enough to make, let's say, 100. And here's something I haven't tested before this video. I haven't tried the hide with my multi-craft tool. With my current inspiration tool, I have about 8% more about 8% more inspiration, which really seemed to matter. So right now I'm thinking about trying it where I'm trading, gaining about 10% multi-craft and losing about 8% inspiration. I don't know if that's worth, but I think I want to give it a go. It's definitely worth using this tool on something like the armor kits, but I think I'm going to try it with this. Okay, I am over at the crafter. The cool thing is, Craft Sim seems to have this new feature of the craft results where you can kind of see, like, how much your crafts cost, like, and how much profit you're going to gain. So we're going to see this probably go negative and hopefully jump back to positive if this works the way that it should. I'm probably going to rely heavily on getting lucky and getting 1 or 2 decent multi-craft procs, but again, I'm trying this way just because I haven't done it before. I bought enough to do 50 goes of Stonecrust, as you can see, with using tier 3s at this crafting cost, which I got it and it was actually a little bit less than that, about 1430. But you can see that I'm within 7 skill points. You're going to see it pop up over on the side, and you're going to see that I hit a T3, and you're not going to see the word inspired there. That'll let you know that I literally hit that T3 based off of the hidden skill and not inspire proccing it. So let's go ahead and drop an incense. That incense knocks me up to about 28%. You can see this tells me, oh man, you're going to get massive negative because Craft Sim can't take into account crafting it this way. It does look like Stonecrest might have just changed on the auction house, which might mess up these numbers, but let's go ahead and take a look. Let's do some quick crafting. You can see I hit multi-craft on the first one, but like take a look at how many tier 3s we're getting. That's 5 tier 3s in a row. And remember, I only have 28%, so we should not be seeing anything too insane. Right now, as you can see, we are negative still. Probably going to be really reliant on hitting some tier 3 multi-craft. Tier 2 multi-craft, dang. I knew this would be close. Didn't know if this was going to be good enough. There you go. That helped. Very slightly positive. There we go. There's a nice one. But look at the run. Look at the run of tier 3s I'm getting. There's a nice multi-craft. You see, that's what was needed. And we'll craft one more for good measure. There you go. So according to this, that was about 7k profit and all of that, which really isn't insane considering how many were done. But if you look at it, that's really not too bad. So there you have it. That is crafting with skill, the hidden skill, right? I only had 28% chance to inspire with this current setup, and that's also with 13% multi-craft. So with only 28% inspiration, you can see that I literally got, you know, 2/3 of what I got was tier 3 as opposed to tier 2, which, you know, let's just say 66%. 66% on this go was tier 3 over tier 2. I was already telling you that before, and I do believe this was before I was Kultiran even, that if I used inspiration, what I was getting back was approximately 75%. I'm assuming that would go up to closer into the low 80%. Now that I'm Kultiran, this probably would have been better to take the lower multi-craft and just do inspiration. I can pretty much guarantee that, at least on the crest. I probably should have used this tool. Luckily, this tells me I'm still going to net profit. However, I bet you, not just that, if this was a better tool as well, that would make a huge difference. But currently, this is one way to make profit, and you can gain mostly T3s back. I didn't really let you guys know the numbers, but I'll let you know now. I spent around 71 or so K gold buying all of this, and as you can see, I'll get around 81, almost 82 back. So I really am going to gain around 10k, and then if you take out the auction house cut, obviously I'll lose a little bit more. So obviously the craft sim and stuff wasn't exact on what I was getting back, but it was in the ballpark, and that's good to know, basically. But this is one way of doing it. Now you can wonder, it's like, well, what if was crafting it the normal way more gold or not? Well, let's go take a quick look. As I reset this, oops, this is using tier 3. Let's simulate it with tier 2s. Will I do that? What does it say? It says I would gain around 59 gold profit per. Now, I don't know if this is per item or per craft, right? So we did, how many we did? We did 50 crafts, you know. 50 crafts times about that 59 would only be about 2.9k gold, even if it was per item, right? If it was per item, that would still be less than what I got back. So just quickly taking a look at it, it would appear that even though it looks like you can make gold crafting this, back into simulation mode, you can make gold crafting this the general inspiration route, it is still less gold than if I were to do it this way. And that's just because of the difference between like where the T2 and T3 materials are. that has a big part to do with it. But either way, that was way more profitable, and that's kind of the thing I wanted to talk about. It was way more profitable to craft this way rather than general inspiration. Now, obviously, there's definitely been times I've taken a look, and it's definitely been better to craft via inspiration rather than via the hidden skill. But the big thing I want to point out is, in particular, I wanted to talk about the Fierce Armor Kits. The reason I want to talk about those is there's only a couple people that seem to be doing it, but they're obviously crafting with the hidden skill, and they are, anytime anybody like fights them at all or sells, they're plummeting the price, and they're plummeting it to a point where basically if you're not in the same situation I am, which is you're the right race, you're a Kurltaran, you're maxed on leatherworking, you have all 3 equipment tools, you're rocking like a T5 multi-craft inspiration tool. Unless you're like as pushed to the brim as possible, you can't make gold. This same guy was posting hundreds and hundreds. I mean, he had thousands of them, obviously, because he had about over 1,000 on the auction house at the time. But, you know, we'll post them at a price where basically only they can gain gold. So if you're basically not in the situation I am, you can't, or in the situation he is. And as much as there will be more people over time getting into this situation, most all leather workers, or maybe who are trying to mess with this, probably are not in this situation. And that's kind of the thing I wanted to talk about, is just how I don't like the direction that this brings. We already are at a point where people are making, the best example I can think of is probably gems. Usually on the gems, your profits are mostly coming from whether it's multi-craft or resourcefulness, something to that effect, that is what is really making you gold when you craft a lot of them, whatever the case may be. A lot of times, straight up crafting, posting T3 is usually at a loss, you know, and the only gold you're really getting is from those procs. I think resourcefulness and stuff is pretty cool. However, I don't like the idea of crafting something and that being like where my margins are, you know. I find that frustrating. And the best way I can explain that is I want to take, you know, I'm just going to grab items. I want to take A and B and, you know, I don't know, make C, right? I want to take 2 items or whatever, make an item, and that's what I want to sell. That's where I want my profits to come from, is selling that item. Instead, what ends up happening is the vast majority of the time I have to take A and B to make C, but I have to sell A, B, and C to get my gold, or use A and B into more procs and so on and so forth. And I don't like that part of it, I guess. In particular, when prices are pushed to the point where that is where the profit's at. Now, this Fierce Armor Kit's currently at this exact moment not a good example, because it looks like you can do general inspiration crafting on these right now, meaning the standard way of buying the cheapest resilient leather, buying the cheapest, you know, stone crust, so on and so forth, crafting them, hoping for inspiration procs, and, you know, this craft sim at least tells you that you should come out on top. That's different. This is normal crafting for the most part. Yes, in this particular instance, you're probably going to rely pretty heavily on multi-craft. Multi-craft is not too big of a deal because multi-craft gives you back the exact same item. It's more of the resourcefulness stuff that kind of bothers me. That's why this is not a good example, because usually that is reserved for things like gems and stuff like that, where that's like where all the profit's coming into. So the point I'm trying to make is normal crafting, in this case, looks like a few of these you actually can make a little bit of gold off of. That hasn't been the case all week. It's actually been pretty difficult at times, or at least not worthwhile, in my opinion, to go around Inspire crafting trying to make a profit. The profits have just been really, really low, And it seems that if I wanted to make a profit, I basically had to find a place where the hidden skill crafting was viable. So I'll just try to quickly break down the thoughts again. TLDR, TLDW, I guess, is that crafting with hidden skill is extremely strong. For an example, Fierce Armor Kits, I wasn't able to make gold on these for the last week or so. It was just constantly negative, and one of the ways I was able to combat that, because I was constantly thinking God, how is this person selling these at near 5k? I'm how is somebody selling so many of these at this price and making any gold? It just doesn't make sense. Why are they so low, pushing the market down so low? And all I can think of was the hidden skill. I decided I wanted to go into that a little bit further. So I've used some, WoW tokens or whatever, and I went ahead and I race changed. And I race changed to Golterian for the +2 skill, because it really matters. And then I also made sure that I crafted, in this instance, a tier 5 multi-craft inspiration tool to just get the absolute most I can. Technically, I can gain just a very small amount of resourcefulness here, and technically I do need to upgrade this to tier 5, because that is a very small amount of inspiration and multi-craft I am technically missing. But for the most part, I am pushed about as far as you can in terms of what I can get out of this. So it's one of those cases to where if I can't make money, literally nobody can. There's nothing else you could do, minus those small amount of stats I'm missing there. But that's kind of my point. And I was like, wow, what is this person doing? So after doing some testing and seeing how I flat out couldn't make gold, the fact that I switched to Golterian made a gigantic difference. And then I was able to also upgrade my tool, which just went even that much further. And with those combinations alone, I was able to start making gold with the hidden crafting method. And doing the hidden crafting, the other thing is the margins are pushed so low that I believe my stats showed that I spent, what did I spend? I believe I spent 300,000 gold on an initial investment, just to test it. I think I spent 300,000 gold, and I believe I made back 10k profit out of that 300,000. As much as that's holy crap, that you spent an awful lot of gold to make very little profit. That's my entire point, is that the margins and things are pushed so small. I have to be pushed to the absolute max to be able to even get that much profit. And that's what people are doing in some markets, is they are pushing it to so thin that unless you are perfectly set up, you can't compete, which does a couple things. One, nobody wants to spend 300,000 gold to make 10,000. Spend 300,000, get 310 back. That sucks. That's not real smart use of gold. It's just those margins are so tiny that I don't want to do that. Usually if I see super small margins like that, I'm I ain't doing that. So I can mess with pennies on per craft, essentially. Who would want to do that? Well, what people are doing is they're taking advantage of that, and they're doing that and making people look at an item like that and be like, wow, these are selling at terrible prices, I can't make gold, and then that person bails on the market. What that ends up doing is leaving the market for that one person or two people, or the few who know what's going on. They're the only ones that make gold in that market, and as much as they're not making very much per, the fact that they own the market and nobody can compete with them means that if anybody needs that item, it has to go through them, which means they're just constantly making gold. I think it's dumb. It's something that's been done since, usually the prior to the regional auction house, that would happen on a server-to-server basis, where maybe if you're a goblin and you're competing heavily against somebody, and if they just really were being frustrating and just not letting you get sales because they're just, undercutting you every second. You just can't, get any sales because they're, doing that. What you could do is, if you have the gold, you could essentially push the market to a low enough point to where either you're making very, 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 very little, or you're even losing a little bit, and you keep it there. and you would keep that market at that point to force people to, and just let them know that you're willing to lose gold over it. Eventually, other people are going to not want to lose gold, and they're going to bail on it, and then they abandon the market. They go do something else instead. You realize that they've abandoned it. You then raise the prices. Anyway, it is just awful. It's just awful. It's unfun. It's unfun for everybody. And I'm seeing that happen again on the regional level, which is just even worse. Because at least when it was a server-based economy, that would be happening on X server, but not everywhere, right? But now, if something like that happens, it affects every single one of us. So, and the only way to stop that, I guess, is to do the exact same thing, and that's again awful for everybody. So it basically allows the rich to get richer, and then nobody else can gain anything. And yeah, and that's kind of why I was getting frustrated with it, and I had to go out and kind of try it and do it myself and see what was going on. And then I kind of realized, oh, this is obviously how this person's making gold, and they've pushed it so low that they are able to control the market because nobody wants to compete at these awful prices. So this guy gets to make pennies while everybody else can't make anything. So I kind of just wanted to bring that to the forefront, talk about it a little bit, talk about how it's both good and bad. Now, one of the ways that it's good, like how could this possibly be good? Well, in this example, let's go take a look at Stonecrest. Is probably a good example. If we go take a look at some of Stonecrest, look what's happened to Din's Hide this week, right? Or in the last week and a half or so. Din's Hide has really risen in price, and now it kind of has like a new floor, which is right around 500 gold, and it's kind of been there the majority of the week. There's a reason for that. And the reason is exactly that, how people are crafting with this kind of method. Because if this T3 falls too much, that allows people to absolutely print gold, right? Like if this was 400 gold per, I would be super printing gold by doing the hidden skill method. So the prices can't keep falling on this, so then they start to go up. They kind of start to level out a little bit. So yes, so what I'm trying to get at is this kind of method does help keep the prices of, in particular, T3 things like Din's Hide and things like that at a higher price because of what people can do with it. So that's helpful to keep that like side of the economy healthy or healthier, which is very interesting. And then it should help with the prices of like T3 Stonecrest and stuff like that as well, to not allow those prices to get too high, given how you can easily essentially print them in a way with doing that other method. So now if like Stonecrest T3 is too high, I have a very, very reliable way to make them basically 75% of the time or higher, depending on like what tools and stuff I'm using. And I can start to make a pretty tremendous amount of gold pretty quickly. So it does help with the economy, in a sense, I guess. It's just some of the other shenanigans that I guess is done by the actual players in particular, to force out competitors, that this just enables, I guess. It makes it easier for them. That's the part that I really, really dislike about it. But let's talk about another issue with it. I'm not sure if I think it should go away or not, if I'm absolutely honest. I kind of think to myself, I wonder, it's like, man, well, I'm actually changing my mind right now. I do think it should go away. What I think should go away is just the fact that race matters in the game, which I think is ridiculous. I mean, obviously, like, oh, well, it matters in PvE, technically, for these small percent differences. Like, okay, you can take that correlation and bring it over into crafting. I really don't like the fact that in order to maximize my profits, in order to maximize what I'm doing, I had to play a race that I don't want to. I find that very frustrating. I almost didn't change it because I'm like, you know what? I do not want to be a Colterian. I want to stick with what I am. I like it the way it is. Why would I want to change? Well, here I am, and I've changed. And I've changed because, well, the number one thing that matters to me is making gold, right? Um, some people, it doesn't matter. They don't care what class, the race they play. It does matter to me. So I do find it very disheartening that something like this dictates what race I play. Alright, I think that will just about cover it. Sorry I rambled quite a bit, and it's a bit of a rant too, I guess. But there's kind of a lot of going on with that whole situation of the hidden crafting skill. I think I know why it's in the game, however, I'm not too happy with the fact that your race is so important in crafting to the classes that can take advantage of it. Or not classes, but to the professions that can take advantage of it, because not all of them can. Such as, I know, as everybody else probably knows, that you can go drain eye and go prospecting, and then that's basically probably going to be the only way to make gold that way from now on. And then I know that I can do it as a Golterian and gain benefit going into leatherworking and doing what I'm doing currently. I don't know about some of the other race and class combinations, like let's say Goblin and Alchemy, because I'm not really big into Alchemy. I don't know if somebody's able to make that busted at all. There is other combinations as well, whether it's with Inscription or Enchanting or whatever the case may be. And I don't know if those are, I guess, you know, things that people can make profit where others can't. I haven't looked into them enough. I just know that you can do it with prospecting, and I definitely know that you can do it with leatherworking. And it's frustrating that I have to be a specific race in order to gain that sort of profession advantage. I mean, I guess that's kind of the reason why they have racials in the game like that, right? Of, you know, these... Well, I mean, take Golterian. These Golterians, jack of all trades, they can do anything, they can make anything, so they're just kind of a little bit good at everything. I get it, but it's frustrating when it's so important in gaining profits. It's one thing to help you just get to making something that like requires max skill easier or whatever the case may be. Like, that doesn't bother me too much, but the fact that it's so dang important into actually netting profit because of the way that hidden skill works, that is what is frustrating to me. Let's kind of clear that up. But anyway, if you liked this video at all or got something out of it, or maybe you just wanted me to shut up too, I don't know, probably. But anyway, if you got anything out of it, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. Let me know what you feel about hidden skill crafting. Let me know if you're doing anything with it. Have you seen profits? Are you doing something I'm not? Do you feel differently? All of that sort of stuff. I'd love to know what others are doing. I have a feeling that there's not a gigantic number of people that are doing it yet, but I also have a feeling that that is going to quickly change over time, and that will become like the primary method. The good news from my end is it looks like that basically gives me, at least with leatherworking, a second way of crafting that I have to look into. The bad part is the math isn't really all there for me until I work with it more and I mess with it more and I kind of find my own cheat sheet numbers kind of thing of like when I deem it worthwhile to do it that way. You know, that'll be a little bit easier. Right now, a lot of people using Craft Sim. It's pretty easy. You look down, you see, cool, I can craft now. This is profit. Let's do it. There's nothing out there for this method as I'm aware, which makes it a little bit more difficult. You have to do some of the math yourself and a little bit of trial. For me, it's a little bit of trial and error, seeing what has worked and what hasn't, and that kind of gives me a better number to go by when I'm looking. I have to figure out stuff a little bit again because of changing to Golterian a few days ago or whatever it was. Believe it or not, those 2 skill points are insanely valuable. And maybe using an item like the Fierce Armor Kits isn't a very good example because of the spec for going armor kits. You gain a lot of multicraft and you gain additional from hitting multicraft, so that makes something like that so insanely valuable, and it's even more valuable when you consider that the majority of the time you are going to be hitting tier 3, so that when you do hit those multi-crafts, and when you hit a multi-craft of like 8, tier 3, like that's absolutely insane. So anyway, hopefully you guys found this at least interesting, and hopefully not too insanely ranty. With that, guys, I will see you guys all in the next video. Thank you to all the supporters. I appreciate all of you. I wish I can get you guys out some new content that's interesting to see, but in all honesty, I'm working really hard on doing the the hidden skill crafting stuff, and I've kind of just been in keep up mode, getting my profession my profession weeklies and all that kind of stuff, just keeping up with the stuff as much as I can. There hasn't been a lot that's been making profit. Some of the only profits I've been able to garner has been through leatherworking, messing with that method. So anyway, guys, I will see you guys all in the next video. Take care.